This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.
Hello, world. It's me, Dennis, and today I'm here with Domo Hardaway. Is that Hardaway?
It is.
All right, like Anthony?
Yeah, fun fact. We're cousins. We're distant. I have the pleasure of having actually an older father. My dad was born in 1936.
Yeah.
So Penny and I have the same great-grandparents.
How cool. Well, now, you grew up where?
I grew up in San Antonio. It was a split. I spent about the first 12 years of my life in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah.
When I'm actually a military brat, so if any San Antonians listen on this, my mom worked at Kelly Base.
Yep.
It ended up closing down my early childhood. So around 12, 13, we moved from San Antonio actually to Oklahoma City, and she started working for Tinker. So I spent out my middle school years and my high school years in Oklahoma.
All right, you graduated from high school when?
2011. So
what was your political consciousness at that time? Who were you, Domo? And tell me about him. Describe him and who you were and who you thought you were doing on the planet. Because you've gotten so involved in politics, you've really gotten a chance to get into activism and all. But how did that start? What was that around when you were graduating from high school?
I think I was comfortable. I had the benefit of having two parents who were very active citizens.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was born in 1936, so he remembers, a large portion of his life when he couldn't actively vote. My dad would talk about how he didn't have access to certain things until he was in his mid-30s. My mom, who was born in the 60s, her birth certificate actually says colored on it. So
wow.
That the context of that childhood, you become an understanding active citizen, but also you have the benefit of understanding where we've come.
Yeah.
Because I had so many privileges that my parents didn't just because of when I was born. So at 18, actually graduated high school at 17, but 17, 18 going into college, after going to a predominantly white high school, I moved I can tell you growing up on the east side of San Antonio and then leaving out of that, going into slightly rural Oklahoma is a big culture shock, culture difference.
I can imagine. And what was that like, Domo? And how did you maintain your cultural identity?
I didn't. I didn't. I lost it. So I am both Black and Latino. My mom's half Latino. So, and growing up in San Antonio, it's a real blend of it.
It's such a melting pot in San Antonio,
Exactly. And you almost, I can tell you, I didn't understand what it was to truly be a minority until I moved along. I didn't really truly understand racism in context. It was almost taught to me like it's taught to other people. But when you're 13, 14, Black and brown in rural Oklahoma, you learn what racism is pretty quickly and you adapt to it. So at 17, I think that I was someone who was comfortable, who understood the privileges that I had, that had kind of adapted to racism. And I was off to go to Oklahoma State University and figure out how to make some money. I wanted to be an attorney at the time, not a civil rights attorney or I wanted to do big law. And, I wanted to wear the suits and drive the cars. And I think it was my college experience that actually gave me the development and made me in many ways who I am today.
Then did you have, all right, so your college experience and really at OSU, understanding, did your political consciousness change? Did you begin to evolve at that time? What was influencing you?
It was out of necessity. So I going to Oklahoma State, which is referred to as a predominantly white institution. I was actually at Oklahoma State at the same time as when we were having nooses hung on our campus. There was there was a video. This was at the start of when social media really started to pick up. So you started to see viral videos of individuals being racist on campus, people doing blackface. I was a junior, and I had actually just joined a fraternity around the same time that video at OU, which was down the highway from us, SAE, where they were on that bus chanting, "There'll never be a nigger SAE."
Exactly.
So, and when that happens and you're at this predominantly white institution, it ain't nothing but 17 student leaders that are of my color. So I sat on SGA boards, not even because it was the political things to do, which is a position to hold because it looked good on my resume. I was a member of different organizations for the resume boost, not to do the activism, but when something happens, now I'm thrust in this position to what do we do now? And it was the necessity of, if I don't speak up for my people or people that look like me, if I'm not an advocate, if I'm not a defendant of my folks, in this situation, literally no one else will. So
I agree, but that was also a choice because you could have still said, well, that's nice, but I'm going to go get my law degree. I'm going to make my million. I'm going to put that up, and then I'll get involved if I have time.
Yeah. I mean, which I think in some ways that goes back to how I was raised. Like I was raised as, and even to this day, I don't consider myself a politico. I don't consider myself an activist. I just think I'm a very active citizen. I remember
you're a citizen. For God's sakes, we're citizens.
Exactly. Like I remember when Barack Obama left office, a lot of people asked him, "What are you going to do? You were just president. You just lead a free world. What's your next thing?" And his response was, "I'm going to go do the most important job I can do, which would be a citizen." And I think that if all of us took that same perspective and just focused on being citizens, this country would be in a lot better space. And also, with that being said, this country needs to do a better job of allowing us to be that, but that might be a separate conversation.
All right. So you come back to Texas, right? And then how do you get involved with the Democratic Party? How do you get involved in elections and get involved in this push for democracy? Because one thing that is clear to any of us that are paying attention is that the democracy is under threat in ways that we could not have predicted before, and that our elections have been thrown into question enough to where, and voter suppression laws that are completely unnecessary and are being shoved down on us. So all of that's happening. How do you enter into this?
Yeah, so in undergrad, I majored in economics. So I graduated from Oklahoma State with an econ degree, can't find a job, and I ended up not working in my field initially. So I relocated back to Texas finally after 2 years of looking for a job. And I felt unfulfilled at work because I wasn't doing pricing, I wasn't doing strategy. I ended up being really interested in development economics in undergrad. And I just felt like I wasn't using my skills. So like anyone my age, I started tweeting a lot. I started using social media to take concepts that I thought were seemingly complex, but truthfully weren't. They were just overly jargonized or they were being gatekept. And I wanted to start breaking down these concepts like what capitalism is, what socialism is. But that was a hot button thing around 2018. They were calling all Democrats radical socialists. And I wanted to be able to really fight disinformation via social media, specifically from an economic perspective. And that really snowballed into me becoming a pseudo-political pundit on social media, and that put me in a position where I can have conversations with amazing politicians, amazing leaders, and hosting media-esque outlets. I have branded my media company called Keep It Simple, and the whole idea is taking things that are complex and breaking it down in its simplest form. And we discussed stuff, like I said, like politics. We had a very interesting discussion on the filibuster, and really taking people through political strategy, political gamesmanship. I now work in comms. I've worked in comms for 2 candidates, and now I am doing this partnership with Powered by People, which is Beto O'Rourke's organization focused in Texas, where we do some communications on democracy. But yeah, it's my ability to take, like I said, and I always like to say seemingly, because I always say this stuff is nowhere near as complicated as it seems. It's just written in a way where it's supposed to be. It was written in a way where where people were not supposed to be able to understand the jargon because they don't want you to. And I say they loosely.
Thank you. We're at the summer, and there's a wonderful lawn person outside, so I'm muting from in between times, just so that we're in between the mows. So keep doing that. Keep doing that, since Renee isn't going to be able to come on screen, our director. All right. So here's what I'm asking. So you know that this is happening, and you know that this is. What attracted you to this particular organization?
I think, again, necessity. I remember the day Trump won. And I was actually still in Oklahoma at the time. I was looking for jobs to move back home.
Yeah.
And I remember going to sleep thinking, oh man, it doesn't look good, but there's no way it'll realistically occur. And then I woke up and it felt like the earth shattered a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was dejected. And I spent those next 2 years, the first 2 years of that presidency, almost in a rage. Frustrated, angry, depressed, frankly. And then I moved back to Texas, finally.
Right.
In the summer of 2018. And my significant other, name's London. She's actually sitting over there looking at me right now. I'm at her family's. He waved. I'm at her family's house. And her family has a beautiful home in Plano.
Right.
And she says, "Yo, there's this person who's running for Senate. His name's Beto, and he's doing a speech at Legacy West, which is maybe 3 minutes down the road." I'm like, okay, hey, let's go. Why not? Let's see what it is. And we actually couldn't get to see him because that's how huge the crowd was.
Yep.
And we stand outside, we take a picture with a Beto lawn sign, and we bought some buttons. And from that moment, I started following his career. And I'll say the thing that inspired me to be where I am. And then, fast forward later, 3 years later, I get to talk to him multiple times a day. I get to assist in some of the live events. I get to volunteer with the organization. I get to do voter engagement, voter registration, et cetera. I think the thing that as I look back on that 2018 moment, it is a little bit of hope that sparked a little bit of blue in a red state that I think will be the change we want it to be. Driving all across this state, having town halls, shaking hands, listening more than you speak. Since 2018, I have worked for a decent amount of politicians doing either political policy advisement or communications writing and comms messaging.
Absolutely.
And I can say they don't make them like Beto.
Never known anyone like him. I've studied politicians and I've studied people who are activists, and I do not know. I mean, Stacey Abrams has my undying admiration, but Georgia's a lot smaller than Texas, just geographically, and the hill feels higher. The scale going up, the uphill seems a greater. Although she proved it in Georgia that it could happen, it just seems like it's a steep hill, Domo. And can you break it down for me? Break it down into a way that I can understand it, in a way that I can keep my my enthusiasm, because we're having to do it now. We cannot wait.
Well, I think the thing that should make you to keep your enthusiasm and give you some hope is that work is actively being done. I would say, number one, we obviously need Congress to pass that For the People Act and get us some sort of reauthorization on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But that aside, what I see, so earlier I said I'm an economist. The thing I actually specialized in was development. So whether it's as small as a city block or a neighborhood is up to an entire continent, how do you develop something?
Yes.
And the thing they always teach us on day one is actually infrastructure. So anytime you want to grow something, you want to change something, before you come in with your bright ideas and you're pitching, you're selling, the very first thing you need to build is actually infrastructure. And I think that's the thing that Stacey Abrams showed the world and showed America is you have to build out infrastructure, right? And I think that what I'm seeing from Powered by People, from the Texas Democratic Party, from Beto, from all these organizations is they're taking that cue and they're building out infrastructure throughout this state.
Right.
And I think what makes us so interesting is that our leaders are really listening to us now. I was saying it earlier. I've worked for different politicians before, and I volunteered for different politicians before, but I've never truly had an opportunity where I can say something, I can make a suggestion, and I feel like I'm truly being heard, and I can see the results and I can see it listened to. And that's not something that generally occurs. Generally, it's, come take direction, come do, etc., and boom. And that's not what I'm seeing today. Exactly. What I'm seeing today is, how do I reach out? How do I reach out to the Black community? And they're asking people from the Black community, what do you need? Hey, how do I reach out to the Latino community? And you have people from the Latino community saying, hey, this is what we need, and so on and so forth. And I think that's what should give people hope. That's what should make people optimistic, is that we as a community are finally understanding that, we're not the same. We're not going to agree on everything, but if we come together, we listen to each other, we can find some middle ground and progress and flip this state blue, but we have to listen to each other. And
exactly.
That's what should give people hope. But we still need that For the People Act.
Yes, and all right, and it concerns me, rather than talking, while I would really love to see that happen, I'm really concerned about the filibuster, that it's not going to, that Manchin and Sinema are not going to, the two senators who are saying that they will not do anything to modify this just for this. Is there something we can get through? Can the John Lewis, can we get back to pre-clearance? That the idea that in order to change election laws, you have to be able to run it through the Justice Department before you can do an unnecessary change to your election laws.
Yeah, I think that there's some middle ground to be found here. I've always been of the mindset when it comes to politics, where there's smoke, there's probably going to be fire.
Yep.
That's just kind of always been my thing. I think that we've been discussing this for a long time. And also, you can say whatever you want about Joe Manchin, and I got a lot to say about him, and same thing about Sinema, but they're not stupid. They're smart.
Good God, no.
They understand, and I think in many ways that there's some. I think that there's some political gamesmanship being played, and I don't even necessarily believe that's a bad thing, because here's the thing: if you just run roughshod through that darn filibuster day one, the other side of the aisle is going to be able to come out and scream, "Oh, the Democrats didn't even try. They didn't do this. They one party rule." They'll be able to do that signaling, and while it's frustrating, hey, that might work for some folks, and you might end up losing some of your majority. You might end up losing some of your power, and then they can roll everything back what you do. So what I personally think is happening is that you're seeing a little bit of political gamesmanship, and I think that it's on us as a people to continue to push the envelope forward.
Thank you.
And in doing so, we'll get some kind of reform. But I'll say this: I don't think Joe Manchin makes the moves that he makes unless he has 10 votes in his pocket to do something.
Yeah,
I think that there is some sort of compromise. I'm more than willing to give up a little bit to get a lot. And I think that there is some sort of logic on some side of the Republican aisle, and it may pain me to say that as a super Democrat. But there has to be something we can come to. And I also say this: I'm more than willing to give it a little bit more time and a little bit more of a try. And with Manchin, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of space. You go see if you can get me 10 votes for something that works, and if not, then I think it's on, the Schumers of the world, of Durban, who is the majority whip at the moment, of President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, to as senior members of the Democratic Party, come in and put pressure on Manchin to change that vote. But I think before you do that, okay.
Run all your plays. Make sure that we're going to cover our bases. Do the Popovich, Greg Popovich, for people that don't know him. He tells you to run the system. Make sure you run the system. Get to your place. Be in the open. And this is why one of the reasons why I admire him so much. And here's the thing. I am a centrist Democrat and a capitalist. This is the place where I live. I live here, and so. But as I talk to my friends who are far more social, it's not socialistic. They're not socialistic. They're just far more liberal. Yeah, they're far more liberal than I am, and feel like that there are more of the governmental solutions and the thing, but we can play here in this space. And so the place where I want to play, where I believe that we can do, is that we can go forward. We can build this coalition. But what do you say to the progressive wing to be patient? Because your pragmatism, Domo, is wonderful. It is a pragmatism that is without. What I love about your pragmatism is it's a pragmatism with purpose. You are doing this. You are doing this for a reason. It's not just a retrograde game to just to keep it out. You're actually doing it because that's the way the game has to work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to them is, and I say this to them because frankly, I'm one of them. I'm probably about as crazy as a liberal as you can get. I just understand how the system works. Yeah. And what I would say to them is this: hey, this is the situation we got. This is the system we have, and I don't always agree with it, but I'll say this: it's probably better than any system that's available in the world. And we can discuss whether or not you think that's a good thing or not, but it's what we got. So you have to move through it. To use a rap line, the great poet Jay-Z said, I'm going to teach you how to move through a room full of vultures. I think in many ways, the idea of a representative democracy means that, hey, everyone's going to be represented, even people who are bad, even people who suck, even people that are hateful, even people that I categorically disagree with you, but I don't necessarily believe that you shouldn't have representation. Now, do I think that you should have power? Do I think that you should have the ability to do certain things? Absolutely not. But we have to be able to move through, like I said, to quote the great poet Jay-Z, a room full of vultures. So let me show you how to do that. Let me show you how to use this system to leverage for your benefit. Let me show you how to use the system to help your people that look like you, people that align with you. Let me show you do it without alienating folks. Because at the end of the day, I have a really smart friend of mine who actually works on the Hill. I won't say who he works for, but he tells me all the time, hey, at the end of the day, it's all about getting 50 votes plus one. And that's about whatever you believe in. So if you believe in a woman's right to choose, hey, what do I got to do to get 50 plus votes on one? Yeah. If you believe in marriage equality, what do I got to do to get 50 votes plus one? If you believe in expanding Medicaid, so we can get more individuals insured, you believe in a UBI, even going to the really far left stuff, UBI, reparations, so expanding social, whatever. How do I get to 50 votes plus one? Mm-hmm. And in that process, you're going to have to make some concessions. I'm okay with giving a little to get a lot. Yep. I'm okay we're trading this for that, as long as we're negotiating in good faith and I'm actually getting some out of it. And if you want to negotiate in good faith with me, then at that point, all right, get this filibuster out of here and push through what we push through.
All right, let me ask you something. I just read yesterday that there is an organization in Texas that is working. So I'm asking you a communications question, since both of us are in communications, and they've broken it down into the messaging is workers, wages, and weed as the three. So that they're saying that that's it. That's our messaging. And we're just going to keep pounding that. We're going to keep pounding that.
That's great. I'll say this. I think that the thing that I have another friend of mine that calls Donald Trump 46 minus 1. She won't actually refer to him as that. But I think the thing that you can learn from 46 minus 1, to borrow that quote from a friend of mine, is that that simple messaging that's repeatable works. So I won't say if that's the one that I would love 100%, but hey, I'm not against it. But I think we're getting to a point where, hey, we got to sharpen up our messaging. We have to simplify it in some ways. And we also need to understand that the messaging that's going to appeal to me and my base might not be the same message that's going to appeal to you and your base. And we need to understand that it's okay to be targeted. The way I sell the Democratic Party in South Dallas is not going to be the way it's sold in North Austin.
No, it's not.
It's not. But here's the thing. The voters of the Democratic voters of Pflugerville also need the Democratic voters of DeSoto.
Thank you.
So, and we need to be able to allow each other to say whatever they need to say, to sell whatever they need to sell, as long as it's not completely clashing, as long as we're still respecting people's identities, people's races, people's, how they identify on the spectrum of LGBTQ, as long as we're respectful. But it's okay for you to say, hey, I'm a centrist Democrat that believes in capitalism. And it's okay for someone who is crazy radical in downtown Austin to say, I'm as socialist as B, and we're both a member of the party, because we both know we need each other to move forward.
Yep.
And you and I can discuss. I would consider myself a socialist. You and I can disagree on economics all day, but I'd rather disagree with you on economics than argue with a Nazi.
Exactly.
And that's where we have to be as a party, and understand that our differences actually will probably make us stronger, as opposed to the infighting we have here, and we're allowing Nazis to run into our capital.
Absolutely, and this is where I'm, because I feel that democracy is hard. It's a hard business. An autocracy is much easier to run. It's much easier because you don't need to be able to build coalitions and do the hard work that it is. But it is also based upon the fact that people. One of the things that I love about democracy, and the thing that I love about being a capitalist, is that I believe in the concept called enlightened self-interest. I can get the best for me by bringing out the best in you. Synergy, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. That if I can lift you up, it's going to lift me up. It's going to lift all of us up. So I want that early childhood education, because I want those kids getting out there and doing the best that they can, the absolute best that they can, having the greatest opportunity. Why? Because I'm a capitalist. Because that's the best system that could possibly do to get them out there and make sure that that playing field is level, that they get an opportunity to have. I mean, my God, when I was growing up, Domo, I saw colored drinking fountains, colored restrooms, white restrooms. I'm old enough at 73 to actually have seen this from the white privileged side. So I got a chance to see that. I want everyone to experience what I had when I was growing up. Never worried about whether or not there was going to be a meal on the table. Never worried about whether or not the rent was going to be paid at the end. Had to worry about going to school, a privileged school. If I needed to go to school, when I got in trouble, I got sent to military school because because my parents were able to afford it. And so I want other people to have the same kind of privileges that I have. Then let's look at the system.
No, listen. I fully agree, and I think And I'll say this. So, to go back to a little bit of hope. I mean, we've heard the quote. The arc, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends
Toward
forward to right. But the thing that generally speaking is misunderstood about that quote is the rest of it says that it doesn't do it naturally. Like you have to bend it yourself. You have to grab on it. You have to yank on it, and it's the responsibility of every generation. To your point, to desire that I want everyone to have what I have, or I want no one to experience what I experience, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And to force that moral bend to continue to move, because it won't do it on its own. I stand here on the shoulders of great people that came before me. I stand here with the privileges that great people who came before me accomplished more while having less to work with. So who am I not to do what I can do to make sure that the next generation has everything that I had and more? And I think that's what it's about. I think that it's about doing whatever you can do, because I'll never see equality from this macro perspective, more than likely. But my parents' generation knew that they would never see it.
Exactly.
My dad was born in 1936. My great grandparent parent was a slave. Born into it and decided to live because they had a desire that their children or grandchildren would see freedom one day. So who am I coming from that, being from that lineage, to not fight, to not push, to not have a desire to live, survive, and thrive? So maybe one day my kids, my grandkids, etc., can live a life where they don't fear for their life when they're around police, when they are paid at an equal rate, etc. And I think that is possible, and I think we're closer. It's just about continuing to try to make it better for the next generation.
I think about that as the people that built the cathedrals. Mm-hmm. They knew back in the Dark Ages and before that, when they were building a cathedral, they knew that they weren't going to see the end of it. They were going to be putting just those stones down. But unless they did that, that cathedral would never have been finished.
I love that, because that's how it is. I don't do what I do for me. I do what I do for the next generation. And hopefully they'll be able to benefit from it.
And one of the things I know that one of the on your profile that you identified as a Christian, mm-hmm. and having that, and that's one of the things that I want to hold all of our brethren to, is the principles of Jesus and those principles. Because if we look back at that, if we take the religiosity out of it and really just go back to what the principles are, and if we live by that, if we live by those principles, we can truly have a society that has a justice to it, and a kindness, and actually being able to see people as ourselves and through our own through those eyes.
Yeah, I always say, when I write my bios, I try to always write them with a very specific order. Actually, let me pull mine up, so I can read it. The very first thing I am is a Christian, and in that, everything is kind of foundationally built off of. Yeah. And you're right. I think that I think we have a lot of Christians who have not read the Bible in proper context, who maybe have not read the Bible fully at all. Yeah. I think you have a lot of Christians who do not study the Bible. They, listen to sermons, play worship songs, and that's not even saying they don't have a relationship with Christ. They just, potentially have not studied His Word thoroughly, because you can see it in their actions. I don't know how you can be a Christian and hate immigrants. I don't know how you can be a Christian and think that you have control over people's bodies. I don't understand how you can be a Christian and not view a woman as your equal. I don't understand how you can be a Christian and you be a dominant leader, not a servant leader, because Christ was a servant leader. Remember, he washed feet. Yep. Remember, that was how He showed leadership. It wasn't from leading from the front.
No.
People always
You know,
want
see, he always taught. He always taught by doing first. He said, "All right, here, I'll do it first. I'll demonstrate the walk, and then you can go ahead and do it." I mean, he did not send anyone out to do anything that he wasn't willing to do first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of Christ. I think that is the wisdom of Christ. I think that's the love of Christ. I don't understand how you can be a Christian and not truly love your neighbor with action.
Exactly.
I don't understand how you can be a Christian and have the vitriol and the hate. I don't understand how you can be that and scream obscenities to people. I get extremely angry at people who do horrible things, and I won't be feeling like I don't curse, but if you have that conviction in your soul whenever you get through cussing, I don't understand how you can consider yourself a Christian.
Yeah.
And I challenge any individual who considers him that, or considers themselves a Christian, that hates other folks, whether it's because of their religion, whether it's because of their sexuality, whether it's because of their perspective on economics, on family, etc. I challenge you to truthfully read the Word. What would Christ say? What do Paul's letters say? What does the Old Testament say?
Yep.
Because the Bible I read teaches tolerance, love, forgiveness,
all the way through, and that is the theme. And you can take that theme, and because we have to look at it thematically, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can take any 3 or 4 words out of a particular context, but if you can read something and do critical thinking and look at it thematically, you cannot arrive at any other conclusion that we're all created equal, that we're all children. They're not grandchildren, they're not stepchildren. We are all children of this loving higher power.
And I'm a Gentile, so I definitely need some grace.
All right. Domo, thank you so much for spending time with me and for taking time out of your day and for doing this. This is a wonderful time, and you've inspired me. And what I want to know is, the last thing I want to know is, all right, now I'm here in Pflugerville, and I'm here in a neighborhood, and I walk out, and I every time I see someone on the street, I go, "Are you registered? Please register. Please take someone to vote who's never voted before. Have you done that?" That's a hard thing to do the first time. I'm just talk vote all the time. What else can I do?
Well, listen, I think that's the most important thing that you can do. So let me first show you respect and appreciation for that. The second thing I would say is, hey, we're in this society where politics is so polarized, and I won't say that it shouldn't be polarizing at a point in time, because when you're discussing things that are true to people's identity, it can be polarizing. But I think it is for the people like myself that has an inherently pragmatic perspective, and folks like you that can sit down with folks on the other side of the aisle, to stand in the gap and try to speak some truth to disinformation. Because you have folks who, if you're a woman right now and you hear people trying to take away your reproductive rights, it might be very difficult for you to have a rational conversation with someone because you feel as if you're under attack. If you're a member of the LGBTQ community and you see people talking about what they're going to do to trans rights and et cetera, it might be difficult for you to have a rational conversation and explain certain things to people because, again, you feel like you're under attack. So I think there's a responsibility for us who as a man, even though I'm a black man, as a man, I do stand here in some privilege here. I think it's a responsibility.
As do I, and then that's what I love, how you're calling me out and you're helping me to know, because I get to be in a space where people who do not have the privilege that I have and do not have the complexion that I have and do not have the gender, and as a male heterosexual, I have that space that I can talk to and be able to claim that space.
And that's all it is. Hey, whether it's a cousin, a family member, a friend, member that has some crazy perspective in your opinion, hey, let's have a conversation.
Yes.
Even if I can't change your vote, let me see if I can change your heart. Because,
Yep.
especially, I think that Texas will be blue regardless of whether or not we can turn Republicans over. I think there's enough black voters, brown voters, new voters coming in from different states that we can empower. So it's not necessarily about getting red votes turn blue. It's about, okay, after it occurs, how are we going to govern and how are we going to actually function? Because I don't want to live in a political war forever. So we got to have somebody, and I think that's where people like you and I can come in and say, hey, we got to end the polarization. You can't use these words. You cannot call people these things. You cannot say these things. We got to meet a way where we can come together and at least have some conversation. Because if not, it's always going to be a war. And I have no desire to live in a war zone.
Thank you. Domo, thank you. I have enjoyed this immensely. You've given me an opportunity to get a window into your soul, into your resilience and your pragmatism and your intelligence. And that's graceful indeed. Thank you for giving me this time today.
Hey, I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on, man.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation was brought to you by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.